Hey, this is Kenny Lattimore, and you know I got soul.
Absolutely, man. Love to be able to hear this new album you have out, Here to Stay.
Oh, nice.
First of all, it's so great to have you back. You know, you've been doing this for so long, giving us quality music all these years. And I checked out the new album, man. It's right in line with, you know, the consistent great music you've given us all these years. I mean, talk a bit about how it's, you know, how it all came together.
You know, it was interesting because it was I call it a mentoring project. It was a gentleman, friend of mine, producer, came to me. His name is Drakkar Wesley, but we call him Madison. He's a great artist. So by the name Madison, we know him professionally. And we were just talking about actually how to help him to get some exposure. And this project seemed like it would be a good vehicle to be somewhat of a launch pad for him. He's done music for me in the past. He did Love Me Back from Anatomy of a Love Song. He did Stay on Your Mind for Vulnerable. He did the Boney James cut, Be Here with Me. 3 top 10 songs in a row. I was like, you deserve a platform because you've been really leading in taking my legacy and blending it with the new relevant sounds and giving me a new approach to being a part of this music industry on a continual basis. So we decided to go in and just do it. So it really has been more Madison's project. And we did, you know, I brought some other friends along like Daryl Simmons and Darren Champ Jenkins, but the rest of it really Drakkar put together, or Madison put together.
That's awesome. You know, it's crazy listening to it. It's just a reminder of the quality music you've been giving us all these years, because it's like you stick to kind of like what's true to you. Like, and that's what I appreciate about Kenny Lattimore. You don't try to do too much, do what, you know, follow what's trendy. And I really respect that, because a lot of artists, you know, from your generation have kind of, and this is not a diss, but have kind of, you know, and it doesn't always work. But when I listen to this album, it exactly is what.
But it goes back to that. It goes back to that kind of collaboration. I think that some of my peers probably want to do music that's going to resonate with the 35-year-old or the 30-year-old adult who is just discovering them, because they may have been 5 or 10 years old when their first songs, like before you came out. I know there's some 35-year-olds. It's like, man, I grew up on this, but they're falling in love and they're getting married now. So it's like, okay, dude, how do we make this sound relevant? But you get a 35-year-old, you get a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And then, but I don't know that everybody's doing. I think that some producers are like, or some artists are probably like, well, we can still do this young sound, or we can, because we've studied it. And for me, it was like 2 things. Let me be a student all over again. And that's okay. There are things I can always learn. I don't care how old I get, I can learn. And then there are things I can teach the younger generation. But the other part about collaboration is that the kids now are going to tell you right off the bat, no, I either believe this from you or I don't. Yeah. And they're going to make sure that you remain honest and authentic.
Right. No, I appreciate that. But let me ask you this. There's many artists from your generation who have kind of given up on recording new music because no one's buying, no one's supporting. And I was just having a conversation earlier today with a trusted colleague of mine who really is in the R&B. And he talked about how Kenny Lattimore, underappreciated, has made such good music, but is not really getting the support he deserves. How do you keep going despite maybe not getting what you deserve?
Wow. Just trying to remain in passion.
Yeah.
I still am doing what I love to do. It's the best job ever. And I think that we do lose sight of that. Either success can make you lose sight of it, or falling short of what your goals can make you lose sight of it. And you can start to say, well, I'm not making enough money. They're not doing this, or they are not doing that for me. I'm not, you know, but I just got to a point when I tell when I'm mentoring and I'm speaking, always keep the love for the music. There were times when the great part of my career is that I didn't start out with my solo record. I started out with Group Man back in 87. 87 is when I got my first major record deal with Epic Records. Yeah. And it was not a commercial success. I did another deal after that with East West Records with Sylvia Rohn. Yeah. The record never came out. when you have those kinds of experiences, you realize that once you actually have a record that comes out, that in itself was a success. And then to actually have people buy it and all of that, there are things that if I remind myself of my past, there are things I just don't take for granted.
Yeah.
Sure. Would I love to have the exposure of John Legend or something like that? Heck yeah. But how can I complain? There are people that wish they were me, you know?
Yeah.
They're wishing they had a career like mine. I'm thinking to myself, are you serious? I was at 10 different major labels, which really technically should have counted me out, because one of the reasons why I can say, people want to know, why do you think you were underappreciated or underrated sometimes? And it's because I never had the consistency of one marketing machine behind me to continue to expose me as I grew.
Yeah.
So you have people who have gaps of listening to Kenny Lattimore. Oh, yep, I listened to him in '96 and haven't listened to me really since. And then all of a sudden you listen to me now and they go, wow, he's got this great album out and all this. Where's he been? Yes, he's back. And I'm like, wow, I did all that music, but not nobody, but a lot of people who could have paid attention were not. They were paying attention to something different. And that's okay too. I mean, it's life. Sometimes people are in survival mode. You know, when we think of what happened just with COVID and all, some people in survival mode. It's not about me. It's just about life.
100%. Let's talk about the album a bit more. Here to Stay, even the title. I mean, what type of statement are you making with that?
Claude Villani, who is the CEO over at SRG, my music partner, he came up with that title, and I thought it was brilliant for so many reasons. I thought, wow, I am still here to stay, committed to this lyric of love that never goes out of style. And I think that keeps the longevity going. Even though people I know want, Kenny, you need a balanced album. You need to talk about pain. You need to talk about something political. You need to talk about this, so then you can win a Grammy and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I need to just be me. Let me just be me and stay in my lane, you know. Like Luther Vandross remained in his lane and was able to have that kind of career. That in itself is here to stay. My relationship, I believe in love. That's here to stay. And as a result of it, I'm in a new relationship, a new marriage. And every lyric of this album has been inspired by my relationship with my wife, Faith, who you guys know is Judge Faith. And that always helps. I really didn't plan this album. I want everybody to be clear. I was about to do a Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole album.
Wow.
I was, because like some of my peers, I felt like, okay, maybe I've done that. I've done contemporary R&B and it's been successful. I don't have any regrets about it. And maybe I've conquered that as much as I'm supposed to. And let me continue to expand, because again, I always want to feel like I'm bringing in something new to myself and learning. And so I called up my buddy Ray Chu and I was like, yeah, let's do some arrangements on some stuff. And I do a lot of the American Songbook in my show. With the R&B too, I do classical R&B, gospel, jazz. I create an experience when people come to see me. So people were like, okay, we understand that, you can do that. But again, when this whole thing came up with Madison and our conversation, I said, let me make some calls. And when we got with SRG and started the project, I told them, I said, y'all are going to love this kid, Madison. I think with me doing this partnership with you, he may be my first artist that I launched from the Sincere Soul Records label. Nice. I never wanted a record label. Never wanted a record label for all of the reasons that we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
But again, some people are worthy to me. They're worthy of the exposure and the time to let people hear what they're doing. Their creativity is so fantastic.
That's amazing, man. I just got to really congratulate you once again, because I went back and listened to your whole discography over the past couple of days, just to revisit, and it's like, you've always stayed true. It's like you've tried different things, but the core of it was Kenny Lattimore. It was who we knew you from. You've evolved a bit, but still was Kenny Lattimore. And I got to give you respect for that, because a lot of artists, like I said, don't do that. So
I appreciate it.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about people who are trying to push you in different directions, do this to win a Grammy, do this to get attention. How hard is it to stay in that lane?
Yeah, it's tough. But again, because I had to prove myself every single time, we did the Kenny Lattimore record we did, From the Soul of Man. All of a sudden, I'm over Clive Davis. Then I'm over with L.A. Reid.
Yeah.
Put out Weekend, which was like, oh my gosh, we got to just, Weekend was the first time that I actually had the record companies saying, hey, you need some younger hit records. And I was like, wow. Oh boy. But what was crazy was it was after I had just done a bunch of records with Clive.
Yeah.
The album ends up not being as balanced, but it gave me the opportunity to work with Troy Taylor, who is my great friend to this day.
Great, amazing.
And Troy is also one who would always tell me, Kenny, step out the box, dude. Let's work with these young guys. Let's mentor them and give them the things they need. And actually, they give back to us. The other brilliant part was, okay, so I leave there. I do these duet albums. That was a manager thing.
Yeah.
With Michael Malden, who's an amazing guy, and an amazing creator. But that was different. That's done through L.A. Reid. Then all of a sudden we're at Jive Records and we're going to do that thing at Jive. And I don't want to do the album. And I don't know if people even knew that. Neither one of us wanted to do that second album.
Wow.
And then it was like, oh my God, but we did it. It continued to sustain us. It became a gospel album. So it ended up at Verity. So then I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't know who I was after that.
Wow. So
we go into Timeless, and Michael Malden, again, thank God for him, just says, just do a cover album. And I'm like, I'm like, oh my God, well, I can't just do #1 hits. I've got to do like something obscure. It's got to be something different about this. But ultimately, it helped me find my voice as a singer again.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that album, another one, people wanted to hate it. I can't believe he's doing these cover songs and all that. But he did this Jeff Buckley, and it's like really amazing. Or he did this Elton John thing, and it's like really, and which, because I don't read all of the critical stuff, but in the beginning I do. I try to take in, again, I'm trying to learn initially. If I feel like you hating, I'm going to throw your stuff away. But if you're just like, you know what, this guy could have done this. I listened to all of that. But what people didn't know was that I was really trying to find my voice again. So we did And I Love Her, and all of a sudden And I Love Her became the standout song along with You Are My Starship. And then I took time off and spent time with my son. We go into years later. It took me like about 4 years to create Anatomy of a Love Song. Yeah. And that was the first time that I said, I'm going to take reins of. I did the Sincere Soul Records label. I called a guy named J.R. Hudson, who had just had all this Jill Scott and Music Soul Child success. And J.R. was my Quincy Jones, if you will, because the other pattern of R&B music, and you know it, is what? 14 different songs by 14 different producers.
Yes.
And you're like, oh my gosh, where am I living? And you better be a great singer if you're going to survive that, you know. But I said, you know, I need somebody to help me to begin to focus conceptually ideas so that the album has some consistency to it, even though I wanted to have highs and lows. So the first project that I really can take credit from me doing, outside of From the Soul of Man, because From the Soul of Man was me again, but it was my lyric album. Yeah. I wanted to write all of these things that men don't always say that we should say, blah, blah, blah. But still, Columbia was they were with me, and I went to Touch of Jazz down in Philly, and I had pretty much a small focused group to make that album. Skip ahead, we go to Vulnerable. Vulnerable was me. Oh no, I did a Christmas album with Aaron Lindsay. Yeah. But I brought Aaron Lindsay over to Vulnerable. He mainly done gospel. We had a fantastic time doing the Christmas album. But that is when I said Aaron and Drakkar, or Madison. Aaron and Madison put together. I know I'm confusing you probably with this Madison. Drakkar Madison Wesley. Don't forget his name because he's amazing. He's a star. So Madison and Aaron Lindsay come together. I find that process, again, just soothing, because it's like my brothers are helping me to stay focused. We're using the other creative talents of people around us, and they're bringing in other young musicians that I never probably would have worked with, but they're helping to keep me focused, and then all the way to this album, because each producer has proven himself. So Aaron is on this one too. Aaron Lindsay is a part of Lose You, Priority, and Survive. And but again, Madison would just bring all of the mixture, like the pot of people together, and oversee it to make sure that it was something special. And then I also wanted to give thanks to one other producer that came in, Juan Nahara, natural is what we call him. He does a lot of work with Babyface and television. He's amazing. But he put the atmospheric sounds together for Lose You. And of course, I went back to old friends like Daryl Simmons. And I had one other young producer come in, Darren Champ Jenkins, whose father did my first album.
Wow.
Whose father did my demo. And I remember little Darren running around the house in his underwear, you know, as a toddler. And I'm babysitting while we're working on my album. And all of a sudden he gives me a wonderful song like Only Girl.
Yeah. That's crazy. Full circle
been a great
moment.
Journey. Yeah, full circle moment.
Thank you for sharing all this history.
All of that. That's my history.
We love to hear the history. I mean, you touch on so much, but man, I got to touch on Anatomy of a Love Song because I wanted to bring this up. Well, two things. First off, I was so glad you linked up with our friends Carvin and Ivan.
Yes.
You know, Vidal Davis.
Carvin was the catalyst.
Who you worked with many years ago on Soul of a Man, Touch of Jazz, which was amazing. So, but that album was so underappreciated when it came out, and that was, I really loved it, you know, and it didn't get the credit it deserved, but I mean, if you could just touch on that one real quick. I know you did just a bit, but that was such
Anatomy
a
of a Love Song. Let me give you, okay, so now I'll go deeper into the history of that. Anatomy of a Love Song started off like this. When I finished Timeless and I took the time off to take care of my son, a lot of things were going on in my life. My family was going through transition, all kind of stuff. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And Carvin Hagens said, Kenny, your voice is needed in the industry. That's what he said. Your voice is still needed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's nice, Carvin. That's Carvin. He said, no. He said, no, I understand. He said, I want you to come to my house and I want you to stay with me and hang out and let's create. And I literally did that. I left LA, went to the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
And some days we would just hang out and watch Martin and laugh and, you know, and he started a song off called Find a Way. And we did Find a Way, and we did a song called What Must I Do? We did another song called You'll Have My Heart. And he gave me the inspiration. He was the catalyst to get me singing original music again. Because again, after Timeless, I didn't know who I was. I needed Timeless to establish me as a singer. Then I started feeling confident again. It took Carvin to say, let's do original music again.
Wow.
So we had a project that was going to be called Back to Cool.
Yep.
I started just collecting all of these songs through the years, and I started doing focus groups.
Wow.
And I started saying, do you think this song is worthy of me recording? and I did focus groups in Atlanta with CSAC. I went to Minneapolis. I did some stuff out in LA. I was all over the place asking people and getting opinions about the quality of the song. And so what ends up happening is I started a relationship with EMI Records at the time when I started my Sincere Soul imprint.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. I just took my money, I put it in, and I was trying to learn as I went along. And what I realized is, yes, I knew how to make an album. I knew how to produce it, mix it, get everything. I knew how to do the artwork. I had to do liner notes and credits. I knew how to package everything.
Yeah.
But I still did not know how to market the product. I didn't know how much it cost. I didn't know, oh man, it was really crazy. So I ended up taking that project before it came out because we had packaged it as Back to Cool. And I still have copies of that here. And I just waited and I said, you know what, let me come out of it. Let me get somebody to take me out of this deal because I'm in over my head.
Yeah.
And repackage this some other kind of way because nobody's really heard any of the songs because I never put it out. The only thing that I let people hear was Find a Way. Mm-hmm. And E1 came along and they were very gracious and they said, yes, they would work with EMI to make sure I could make that transition. And that's really what happened. Some people, I've read stories. It's so funny how people begin to report about your history inaccurately.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, oh, he put that out. It didn't work. And then something happened. And I was like, yikes. You know, but I was like, no, actually Back to Cool never was released. The few people that were able to get their hands on it may have been able to do it because Amazon was prepped and ready to go in terms of their sales, but it was never ever released.
Wow.
And that's why we were able to use those songs, because no one would have taken an album of released songs and bought them to put it. It just wouldn't happen.
That's crazy.
So that's how the whole Anatomy of a Love song came. And then I went back and I just added a few things, the Jakar Wesley songs.
Right.
And the rest was history.
It's awesome. I appreciate you sharing the history. Like, our readers love the history. I love R&B history, so I love hearing these stories. I just want you to appreciate one thing. From the Soul of a Man, right? Awesome album, but like a touch of jazz. Like, I have so much appreciation for what came out of there years later. But do you realize you were kind of the start of giving some of those producers their first shot? Carvin and Ivan, Dre and Vidal, James Poyser. Wow. Like, they were all there in that moment. And then years later, they, of course, Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Floetry.
Yeah.
But From the Soul of a Man came before all of that.
But can I say this? I did want to say this, and I want to go back and talk about From the Soul of a Man. Those guys are so amazing, and they're all stars right now. But they never forgot. The first song was I Can't Get Enough of You from Love Jones. That was where it started. And then I started to say, I'm going to do this whole album with these guys because they're so talented and nobody's heard of them.
Yeah.
I just have that mentor thing in my heart. I've always had it. And but the beauty is, I did Anatomy of a Love song, they all came back to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And they were like, you gave us our start. We're going to give you hit songs. And that's why, I was able to get songs like Find a Way, and even Vidal's, oh gosh, You're My Girl. And just, it was amazing, but it was because of the beginning, Soul of Man. So I'm in Philly and working with these guys. And again, a lot of laughter, a lot of great energy. I get an apartment there just to hang out with these guys. Jeff Towns, or we know him as Jazzy Jeff, was so talented. And to the point where people really don't know that he produced in its entirety the Donny Hathaway remake. And he did the Marvin is 60 remake of Just to Keep You Satisfied, where Motown gave us Marvin Gaye's actual sessions. Oof, that was a trip.
Wow.
So you're listening to him talking and all of that, and as you're preparing to do that stuff. So, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But to work with those guys at that time was really brilliant and inspirational to see. Even when they were bringing in the new artists like Jill Scott, we were wearing, who is Jill Scott, a year before anybody ever knew, just playing her in our cars. So when people got in our cars, we'd be like, oh, this is Jill Scott. She's this new artist that's coming. She's a part of our family. And then Floetry came. And I remember being in the studio with them, and they were like, oh my God, we just got this place. I don't think they had gotten the placement yet. We just submitted to Michael Jackson. And they played the original Butterflies with Marsha. I was like, yes. I was like, this is amazing. And then Jill Scott rolls in, and then she and I start to work on Lately. It's just kind of interesting. Then music comes in and it's like, are you done with the album? And I'm like, I'm done with the album. The other thing that people may not know is Love, Music Soul Child's song that he wrote with Carvin, was actually written for me.
What? No, I had no idea.
It was written for me for From the Soul of Man.
Wow.
And we really done with From the Soul of Man. And when I listened to it, I couldn't hear me on it. I passed on that song. And it was partly because music's style was so unique and it was so different that I was like, I just couldn't hear what I would do. Now I can. And I'm at a different level in my creative process. That I'm like, why did I do that? And maybe one day I'll cover it, just to see.
You have to now.
But he came in, I met him just right at the end of that process. And so then I ended up doing some backgrounds for his album, Star Child.
Wow.
We just tried to be there for one another. And it didn't matter how big or successful any of us became. When you got the phone call, there is sensibility though. If we felt like it made sense, we'd be like, yeah. If it was something that just didn't seem like it made sense, we'd be like, I don't know if that's the right thing. Or saw it to me, and that would be a different conversation.
Right. I love it, man. Thank you so much for sharing all this history. This is amazing stuff right here. I need one more piece of history from you. So,
Sure.
You were part of the group, and then obviously you went solo after that. Your debut album, first of all, quintessential classic 90s R&B album. I was just re-listening this morning, man. It's just like,
thank you.
Fits the era so well, still timeless to this day. But how did you transition from that, that group, and then get that solo deal at the label and be able to do that?
Well, there was quite a few years in that process where when I left Mannequin, one of the most difficult things for me to do, but what I loved the most was being on stage. Being on stage without having that backup of that great band and other singers was like, oh God, I got to carry this all by myself. Can I carry it? It was kind of scary.
Yeah.
And, but I worked with other groups. I did the other record deal I was telling you about that a lot of people don't know about. The group was called Dem Twins, featuring Kenny Lattimore.
Wow.
And I started writing more, and I started to step outside of the whole concept of the group and begin to hear my own writing and hear my voice again through the demos.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of songs. They when I listen back, they may not have been great songs. It was some ideas had some potential, but just from getting in there and writing and staying a part of the industry and singing live, continuing to keep that passion alive with me began to develop me as a solo singer. And then right before I did my solo album, I participated in a gospel album called Broken. And it was a big number one album on the Billboard charts for like 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that. They had a song called Be Encouraged on it. Be encouraged, no matter what's going on, he'll make it all right. Clifton Jones sang that, who was really amazing. But I did 4 songs on that album. All of that was what I needed for me. Singing, keeping the passion alive, my faith being expressed. It was all of these foundational things I think needed to happen before I even started my solo album, so that I went in with my feet just flat on the ground.
Yeah.
And one thing that's really funny, I remember meeting Mary J. Blige for the first time. And we were at some Grammy round table kind of thing at a radio station. And she sat across the table from me and she said, "You're the guy that sings till the end." And I said, and I was like, oh my God, not for you or Never Too Busy or whatever.
Yeah.
She was like, "You're the guy that sings till the end," which was a gospel song on that album. And I realized music is so amazing, and how you never know how and when it's going to touch somebody's life. That this superstar, because she was a superstar then, was like encouraged by this. And I actually heard her on one of the songs, maybe it was a Share My World or something. I think she did an ad-lib from that particular song.
Wow.
And I was like, oh no, I recognize that. But just amazing. All of those things I think helped me to feel like, okay, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. If you give me this opportunity, and that was always my approach. If you give me an opportunity, I think I'm ready to make the statements that were placed in me from my mother and my grandparents, and the responsibility of the pastors and leaders and people put on me, because I wanted to be like BB and CeCe Winans when I was really. And every time I went in to do demos and all that kind of stuff, people would say, "What does he look like?"
Yeah.
And I was flattered. People would go, "Oh, we could sell him to the ladies." But that was never my focus. I came from gospel and all that too. So, but it took me having all of those experiences and feeling well-rounded and feeling like I kind of completed a journey of things, so that I didn't go in feeling the guilt of, I don't know if you've ever heard of a lot of singers talk about their parents saying, "Well, this is the devil's music." My parents never did that, but I heard different people on the outside who are like, is he singing secular music?
Yeah.
I come from a little of that too. So I needed to know that there was purpose in what I was doing.
Gotcha.
And, so all of that prepared me for the moment that the first album came.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really love the history. We're just about out of time, but I want to just ask you one more thing. Let's take it back around to
Sure.
the new album, Here to Stay. It's out now.
Mm-hmm.
When people hear this album, what do you want them to, to take away? What do you want them to feel?
Wow. I want to give people an album that makes them think about love, that makes them feel refreshed in their belief and hope in love. Yeah. That it really is here to stay, that you don't ever have to give up on it at all, no matter what happens, even through breakups, divorce. You're not disqualified to love. You're not disqualified from any amazing experience. And Here to Love is proof of that. And every lyric on it, I hope, just gives people more hope and passion to believe in love as they move on into the future.
I love it. And I'll just add, having heard it a few times, I mean, we're not getting a lot of R&B music like this. There's R&B lovers who crave music like this. I hope they can.
Oh, right.
Because we're not getting music
Right.
with feeling. And this is not like a diss towards anything that's popular or current,
Sure.
but there's
Absolutely.
R&B lovers who need this type of music. I hope it finds them. I hope we can help share the message. But thank you for delivering an album like this, because it's what R&B lovers are looking for.
Wow. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get out of here, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think you've covered it. It's been wonderful talking with you and just kind of reliving it all.
Awesome.
And just the opportunity for me to be able to tell this whole story is an honor, because it does allow people to understand me on another level, and they'll sit back and say, okay, I think sometimes that makes people listen to the album differently.
Yeah.
Just knowing some of the background. So I just appreciate you for allowing me to have the You Got Soul platform, and just appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Always here to support.